Good afternoon and evening, everyone, and welcome to Stamp Talks presented by the Royal Philatelic Society of Canada. Today we have Anne, who has been a worldwide stamp collector for over 60 years. In recent years, she has narrowed her collecting interests and now concentrates on collecting stamps of the British Empire issued during the reign of Queen Victoria through to the early Elizabethan era. During the pandemic, she was introduced to online philately, began to collect postal history, and developed an interest in exhibiting. She has concentrated her research and writings on stamps depicting Princess Elizabeth, issued from 1932 to 1951, and we'll see a little peek of that tonight. She has written an overview article for the upcoming royal program on these stamps. Many of the covers she is illustrating tonight you will be able to see in a show theme exhibit she has assembled and is sending to the Royal. She is a member of the Royal, the three stamp clubs in Nova Scotia, the West Toronto Stamp Club, and the Malta Study Circle, of which she is the membership secretary, and also serves as the secretary of the Valley Club in Nova Scotia. And to summarize all that, just go to the Royal so you can see for yourself. We would like to thank Longley Auctions, our sponsor for Stamp Talks and Stamp Panels. Longley Auctions is a public auction firm specializing in selling Canadian postal history and also large worldwide collection stamps, postcard, philatelic, literature. Be sure to check out longleyauctions.com. And I feel fairly certain that Bill will be at the Royal too. Yeah. So you better come and you can thank him for his sponsorship. Remember, that's happening this weekend. I will be there. I will not be square. Okay, and now we will have our land acknowledgement. If I can just get my screen share, screen, share, sound, share. Okay,
Organizations in Canada, the board of
that
directors
is
of the
not
Royal
it. Hold on.
chosen to acknowledge and
Let me try this again. See, it happens to the best of us, even when we've done this however many dozens of times. And then, of course, like a goof, I closed it instead of pausing it. So you're just going to have to watch my face for one more moment while I get this going again.
like many other organizations.
Oh, not yet, not yet. Wait. Okay. Share. Screen sharing has failed. Interesting. Okay. Er, hmm. I've never seen that error before. Let me try one more time. Okay, third time's the charm.
Like many other organizations in Canada, the board of directors of the Royal Philatelic Society of Canada has chosen to acknowledge Indigenous peoples in Canada with the following statement. As a step towards reconciliation, the RPSC acknowledges that our national office in Toronto stands on the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Our national office is also covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. Furthermore, we acknowledge that Indigenous peoples did not give up the lands that they had been on for thousands of years that now constitute Canada. We also acknowledge that Europeans did not discover Canada or arrive on an uninhabited land. The RPSC acknowledges that Canada is covered by many treaties and modern lands, resources, and self-government agreements with Indigenous peoples, and that the provisions of many of these arrangements remain unfulfilled. The RPSC further acknowledges that many Indigenous peoples in Canada have not had their rights fully recognized and implemented according to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The RPSC pledges to promote recognition and knowledge of Indigenous peoples in Canada and elsewhere and their cultures through philately. We will also work towards building positive relationships with Indigenous peoples in Canada.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Well, it took a little longer than we thought, but we finally got here. Thank you, Anne. Take it away.
Okay. Now, just a minute. I have to get rid of this stuff in the front here. How do I get rid of this? What do you guys
Uh,
see?
we see the Zoom window that says, "Do you want people to see you in the
Yeah.
webinar?"
What do I do to get rid of this?
Uh, if you've still got your PowerPoint open, you can press Alt Tab.
I don't. Wait a minute. Let me go here. Let's see what happens when I do this. Um, just a minute. Whoops, did you get it?
No, we see your email now.
You see my email. All right. Oh dear. All right. Well, I'm going to close this and I'm going to close my email and I'm going to go back and start from scratch here. Share screen.
Hey, it took me 3 tries to get it right.
Okay. Now I have to reopen just a minute. I have to reopen my presentation. Oh, there we go. All right. Now you're not seeing my screen, are you?
No, no.
Okay, now I need to go here. Just a minute. I think I've got this here. Share screen, and we do this, and we share.
All right, starting share. All right, we see your PowerPoint.
Okay, now I need to do what you suggested. F5, was it?
Yes, it is.
Ah, I'm hitting F5 and I'm not getting anything.
Did you also need to press the function key?
Oh, okay. I just did that. Um, Unfortunately, there's no way for me to move that. I've got this side window that says project. How do I get rid of that?
Have you actually clicked into, I don't think PowerPoint is currently your active window, so just click your mouse in PowerPoint somewhere. Yeah, now press F5 or function F5.
I'm getting this project screen come up. Oh dear. We just
That
started
must,
this.
okay, so whatever you did, the either function F5 or not function, you have to do the opposite.
What do you mean by the opposite?
If you had pressed function and F5,
Yeah,
you need to only press F5.
I'm just pressing F5 and nothing's happening.
You've clicked out now. You haven't. You need to select PowerPoint again. You've clicked somewhere out.
I've got the PowerPoint screen open on my
It's
computer.
open, but you're not selected in it. So you need to click in the window somewhere.
Here? Do you see my
Yes.
mouse?
Yes.
I'm clicking.
Okay. Yes. Now do the F5.
Okay, thank you. There. Thank you. I'm glad you're a whiz, Lisa. Thank you.
All
All
right.
right.
Now that
Now are you seeing my screen?
yes.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that. Now I'm going to read primarily from notes so I stay on track and don't get sidetracked anywhere along the line here. As you know, one of my collecting interests is Princess Elizabeth portrayed in real time on stamps issued between 1932 and 1951. During this time, a total of 34 stamps were issued by 14 nations or realms of the British Empire or Commonwealth depicting the princess. 11 were issued to commemorate the 1947 royal tour of Southern Africa. The trip to Southern Africa was made at the invitation of the South African government to thank South Africans for their support and military service during World War II and to bolster support for the then Prime Minister Jan Smuts. It was an extended tour, unique in a number of ways. It was the only official royal trip made by King George VI, his wife Queen Elizabeth, who later became the Queen Mother, and their daughters, Princesses Elizabeth and Margaret, who were 20 and 16 at the time. One of the reasons the princesses accompanied their parents was due to Princess Elizabeth's romance with Philip Mountbatten. The princess and Philip had become secretly engaged at Balmoral in the fall of 1946, and the king had stipulated the engagement could not be announced before the princess's 21st birthday in April of 1947. Both the king and queen did not entirely approve of Philip as a husband for their daughter, and they hoped spending some time away from him would help him with her choice. In the spring of 1946, Prime Minister Smoot requested new portraits of the royal family, on which commemorative stamps celebrating the trip would be based. A number of photographic sessions were held in May and June of 1946, and the portraits are now held by the National Portrait Gallery in London. The photographer is credited as Dorothy Wilding, but research by the Royal Collection Trust states that Dorothy spent much of the 1940s in New York and believes the portraits were taken by her assistant, Marion Parham, aided by Dorothy's stepdaughter, Pamela Ledger. If the portraits look familiar, it is because a number of stamps of many countries and colonies issued from 1947 to 1950 are based on these portraits, including Australia and Canada's 1947 and 48 wedding stamps, Newfoundland's 21st birthday stamp, and Malta's 1950 Royal Visit 3 stamp issue. These are 3 of the portraits that the Southern African stamps are based on, all used with permission of the NPG. All the portraits taken are listed and archived at the NPG website. The royal family arrived on February 17th and left on April 24th. The trip was primarily to the Union of South Africa, but included visits to the colonies of Basutoland, now Lesotho, Bechuanaland Protectorate, now Botswana, Swaziland, now Eswatini, and Southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. Southwest Africa is also marked on this map. This map was published by the Daily Telegraph, a daily London broadsheet newspaper, and it was reproduced in the recently published book by Graham Viney on the 1947 Royal Tour titled The Last Hurrah, the 1947 Royal Tour of Southern Africa and the End of Empire. The tour was carried out mainly by Royal Train with short car trips around Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Pretoria, and to Basutoland and Swaziland. The route is outlined in red, and the route taken was counterclockwise up the eastern course and the coast, then inland as far north as Pretoria. From here, there was a round trip to Petersburg by plane and 3 days in and around Johannesburg and Pretoria, traveling by car, while the train traveled north without them to Salisbury, Rhodesia. They spent 9 days in Rhodesia, then traveled down the western side of the country and to Bechuanaland Protectorate by train, returning to Cape Town on April 20th. I have a simplified map which I'll show you shortly and I'll refer back to throughout my talk. A total of 26 stamps were issued by South Africa, its Southwest Africa Territory, and the 4 colonies to celebrate the visit. The South Africa stamps were issued on the day the family arrived in South Africa, February 17th, in both English and Afrikaans. The stamps were issued in low values, 1, 2, and 3 pence, and a total of 3 pairs, 6 in all. The 6 stamps together have a total face value of 1 shilling. The stamps were also overprinted SWA for use in Southwest Africa, even though the royal family did not visit there. Southwest Africa was a territory administered directly by the South African government from 1915 to 1990, when it became Namibia. The stamps were printed using photogravure by the government printing works in Pretoria. During and post-World War II, British colonies had not issued any commemorative stamps except for the 1946 Omnibus Peace issue. This was in part due to wartime and post-war austerity, and in part a holdover from King George V, who had a dislike of commemorative stamps. As a result, they garnered considerable interest. The colonies also released 4 stamp sets the same day. They were issued in 1, 2, and 3 pence and 1 shilling values. Their production was overseen by the Crown Colonies Office in the UK, and they were recess printed by Waterlow and Sons, also in the UK. Mint stamps of the colonies were available directly to dealers in the UK, so mint stamps are quite common and readily available. Southern Rhodesia also issued a 2 stamp set, but not until April 1st, which I'll show you a bit later. All the stamps, except the Southern Rhodesian ones, were withdrawn from sale on April 24th. So they were only available for, what, 2 months? Yeah, they were only available for 2 months. This is a photographic proof of the colony stamps, which was approved by King George VI, and this is directly from the collection held by the Royal Collection Trust in the archives at Windsor Castle. It's used with their permission. Waterlow and Sons also printed perforated specimen stamps for distribution to the UPU. I don't yet have a complete set of any of the colony's specimen stamps. They've been widely forged, and there are available references to help determine if specimen stamps are genuine or forgeries. I'm going to focus mostly on material from South Africa, primarily because a lot of interesting material is available, but I will show some of material from the other colonies as well. In terms of covers and postal history, they can be split into two groups. The ones of South Africa and Southern Rhodesia can be separated into two groups based on the types of postmarks. There's what I call royal visit covers, or covers with royal visit stamps that were mailed and postmarked at post offices throughout South Africa and Southern Rhodesia, and the 4 colonies used in period for the duration of the visit, or for a period of a few months afterwards. But there's also a subset of royal train covers, covers that were postmarked aboard the royal train in South Africa and Southern Rhodesia. Now, at this point, I need to stop and talk a bit about rates. Researching rates has been the biggest challenge, and the information I have found has come primarily from Southern Africa Society and Study Circle journals. At this time, South Africa and the colonies all had currency based on British sterling, and they were on par with it, so for the most part, the rates were comparable. This has been very helpful in that the information I've found has been spotty and there are gaps, but information on specific rates found for one colony can often be applied to other realms. Mail could be sent by surface and air mail. Systems for sending surface mail were well established. I've tried to summarize rates on the table here. The important points are that surface rates for a single rate letter range from 1.5 to 3 pence, either for half an ounce or per ounce. Airmail rates are another story. In order to understand them in the early years post-World War II, we have to look at airmail routes and rates immediately pre and during World War II. The Empire airmail scheme was to move all letter mail by air throughout the British Empire. By 1937, routes had been established with mail carried by Imperial Airways from London to and from Cape Town and London to and from Colombo, often referred to as the Horseshoe, all for the same price as surface mail, 1.5 pence per half ounce. Some North American destinations were added in 1938. Mail to New York was 1 shilling, and the rest of the U.S. was 1 and 3 pence via London. The war put an end to all of this. Rates jumped universally to 1 and 3 in August 1939. Within a matter of weeks, it was 2 shillings to the U.S. and 2 and 6 for mail that went further than the U.S., i.e. Canada, Mexico, or the Caribbean. Planes did not fly across occupied countries, so routes had to change as Europe and North Africa fell. Mail was still carried to London by Imperial and to the U.S. by Imperial or Pan American Airways. Routes from Cairo to London were first via Lisbon when France fell. The North American mail was greatly affected as routes and carriers shifted, so did both the frequency of flights and rates. At various times between 1941 and 1945, mail went via Lagos, Nigeria, or Leopoldville in the Belgian Congo. Some went on to London and New York. Some went via Brazil, Trinidad, Puerto Rico, and then Miami. By 1943, the single letter rate was either 3 and 6 or 4 shillings if mail went via Lagos and Lisbon or Leopoldville. In late 1944, routes to London via Cairo were re-established and the rate to the U.S. dropped to 2 and 6. This rate was still in effect when the stamps were issued in 1947. Regular airmail to London was re-established in 1944 at a rate of 1 and 3. but it was mid-1945 between service from London to Cape Town was re-established. In early 1947, service was still in the process of being reinstated to the Empire and UPU countries. Registration rates were 4 pence for all colonies, independent of destination. Now, I've put together just a very simplified chart here just to give you a quick idea of how much postage we're talking about. I have comparable airmail rate tables for Southern Rhodesia and Bechuana Land Protectorate, and I've filled in South African rates as best as I can from a number of articles that quote a specific rate on a specific date. To complicate matters further, there were significant airmail rate reductions announced in February, which came into effect on March 10th, right in the middle of the visit. First day covers. Due to interest and popularity of both the stamps and the royal family, many individuals sent complete set of stamps on correspondence, even though they were overpaying domestic and Southern African rates. Most of my first day covers are domestic, and I only have one South African cover with a cachet, which I've shown here. The top is an example postmark Johannesburg, and the bottom is Walmar, a suburb of Port Elizabeth, and they've got blocks of all three stamps. Due to the low value tablet of the stamps and the high airmail rates outside of Southern Africa, particularly to the Americas, it would take a lot of stamps to pay the airmail postage rate, and I think the majority of first day covers were sent surface mail to international destinations. I will be showing commercial covers that were sent airmail, and at first glance they may appear to be philatelic due to the number of stamps, but based on the rates, I don't think that's necessarily the case. These are four first day covers that are all postmarked with rural train postmarks. I'm going to talk more about them a little bit later on, but I just want to show a representation of some of the destinations. These were all sent surface mail. All of them have received back stamps. 3 of the covers have complete sets of stamps paying a shilling, so all are overpaying surface rates. The cover to Tanganyika is backstamped March 25th. The one to Cuba in the upper right is backstamped New York, April 1st. And the 2 to Canada along the bottom, one to Ontario on the left is backstamped April 2nd, and the one to Vancouver is backstamped April 6th. Now remember, these were all mailed on February 17th, so we're looking at close to 2 months for surface mail to get to North America. Here are two first day covers that were sent airmail. The top cover is paying the correct single letter 1 and 3 rate to the UK, and the bottom one is paying 1 shilling, overpaying the 2D plus 4D registration D or 6D rate to Southern Rhodesia. Now I'm just going to give you an example of some regular commercial covers. These 3 covers all went to Ontario. The cover in the top left was sent from Orfordton, which is a suburb of Johannesburg, to London, Ontario, paying the correct 6D rate, which is 2D plus registration, postmarked April 11th and received in Montreal on May 6th. The cover top rate was sent to Toronto from Durban, mailed April 28th, also with the correct CD rate, and backstamped Montreal May 27th. The first day cover sent from Malvern to Brockville is paying 1 shilling, and it too would have gone surface mail, even though it was overpaying surface rates. There isn't enough there for it to have gone airmail. Here's some covers that were sent airmail, and as you can see, they're covered in stamps, and you'd think they were philatelic, but they're not. These are all commercial covers sent airmail to the UK and Europe prior to the rate decrease. So these are all postmarked between the 17th and the 10th of March. All are paying correct single rates, 1 and 3 to the UK, 1 and 7 registered to the UK, and 1 and 6 to Switzerland and the Netherlands. Here are 3 covers that were sent after the rate decrease. The top 2 covers to Hungary and Czechoslovakia are paying the correct 1 shilling and 1 and 4 rates. Now, below, I've shown a cover to Zurich, Switzerland. It's postmarked March 17th, and in the upper left corner, there's a note indicating additional postage on the reverse. It is paying the correct 1 shilling rate, but there's an additional 1 franc Swiss stamp and 20 centime postage due stamp on the reverse, postmarked received March 22nd. So obviously the rate decreases had not been well publicized or hadn't been picked up in all the European countries. Philatelic dealers and residents in the colonies visited also sent out covers. These are first day covers of Basutoland, Bechuanaland Protectorate, and Swaziland, showing some of the available cachets. The colonies covers are really quite attractive. There's an awful lot of different cachets available. Now, all of these covers were sent to various addresses in South Africa. Here's another 2 cachets. Again, first day covers sent to South Africa. And I think you can notice there's a strong royalty and or patriotic theme to all of the cachets. First day covers and date of visit covers are quite common, but commercial covers with stamps of the 3 colonies paying correct rates are very scarce. I've recently acquired few, but I'm only showing one today. All right, on with the tour. The royal family arrived in South Africa on the Vanguard on February 17th, taking up residence on the royal train as soon as they disembarked. The family spent from February 17th to 21st in and around Cape Town. They traveled by car to the Paarl Winery region on February 20th. On the 21st, the King and Queen opened Parliament, shown on the left. This cover is postmarked at the Houses of Parliament on that date. The royal train departed Cape Town on the afternoon of the 21st. It was in fact a 3-train convoy. The 14-train white train included 8 ivory and gold saloon cars which housed the royal family and their personal staff. It was preceded by the pilot train 30 minutes ahead, which carried local officials, the press correspondents, and the bulk of the staff. It was followed a couple of hours later by the ghost train, which carried spare parts and maintenance equipment and maintenance staff. The saloon cars had been built in the UK and taken to South Africa by steamship. There were post offices on both the pilot train and the white train, and also a telegraph and cable office on the pilot train. The pilot train post office was the busiest, as all the mail dispatched from and received for all 3 trains flowed through this post office. The press correspondents filed stories through this office. It included a counter, pigeonholes, lockers, a posting box, and telephones. There were 6 different Royal Train postmarks, all of them bilingual, and all of which are distinguished by the ornament or symbols separating the 2 sets of wording. I have taken my information from this booklet, The Royal Tour Trains, written by Norman Hill in 1977. Most of the examples shown are from my own material. And this book is an absolute godsend. Not only does it have this royal tour in it, these royal tour trains, it has every royal tour train from 1924 right through to 1951. It's got lots of good information about both of Canada's royal trains in 39 and 51. There were 2 royal train first day cancels of February 17th applied in the capital of Pretoria and not applied in either of the post offices on the train. Postmark A has an open circle and English first across the top, and B an open square, which has Afrikaans first, mark both the day the stamps were issued and the arrival of the royals in South Africa, even though the train did not start its journey until the 21st. Theoretically, postmarks A and B should appear only on first day covers postmarked in Pretoria. Registered covers have Pretoria registration etiquettes. These are by far the most common Royal Train postmarks you'll see, and if you see A or B, they were nowhere near the Royal Train itself. This cover on top has postmark A, but it is dated February 26, and the cover below is postmarked on the princess's 21st birthday. I think these must be favor covers. I only have 3 covers with postmarks A or B that are not first day covers. Throughout the trip, the two most common postmarks were both from the pilot train post office, which housed the press correspondence. Postmark C has a solid Maltese cross with English first. These are examples of covers with postmark C. Postmark D has an open diamond with Afrikaans first. These are covers with postmark D. Most of my covers with postmark C and D have been open, so they may have been commercial covers. They were probably mail sent home, in fact, by many of the correspondents that were covering the whole trip. Less common is the postmark of the White Train Post Office, which is a solid square with the English first. These covers with postmark E, and I think all of these are philatelic covers. The rarest cancel is postmark F, that of the telegraph office, an open triangle with Afrikaans first. F was not normally used on regular mail. However, I have it used on two FDCs. I think these were favor covers posted by press correspondents who had moved aboard the pilot train while it was still in Cape Town, and they filed press stories from the telegraph office. Note they have Pretoria registration labels, not a hand stamp. Registered mail with postmarks C, D, and E, which would have been mailed on the pilot train or the White Train post offices, have a registration hand stamp in violet ink and the registration number handwritten in. Now, here's my simplified map. With the blue arrows indicate the direction of travel, and we're going to start traveling through the country. This is a simplified map, and I will show it again. I'm going to refer to it throughout the next little bit. And it came from this souvenir booklet shown South Africa Royal Visit, published by the Central News Agency. Now, I've just begun to collect date of visit postmarks from South Africa's, which are cancels from the place and date of a stop on the tour. I have just a few, which I'm going to show you here. And I'm also going to show visit covers for the three colonies. So first they traveled northeast up towards Port Elizabeth, and early March they continued to places like East London and Bloemfontein. They traveled by train to Maseru, Basutoland on March 11th, and then traveled a closed loop around Basutoland by car on the 11th and 12th, staying overnight en route. These covers are postmarked Royal Visit and dated March 11th and March 12th. They spent the day, March 18th, in Pietermaritzburg, and this cover is canceled there on that date. They spent March 20th to 23rd in Durban, and this cover is postmarked Durban. On March 25th, they traveled to Swaziland by car from Moolman to Mbeni just for the day. Now, both covers here are postmarked March 25th. The bottom cover is just a standard philatelic cover that somebody has made with the postmark of the royal visit, but the top, I think, contained a letter. It was mailed in Ezulwini, Swaziland on the day of the visit and sent to Ermelo just over the border in South Africa. You can see it went to a convent. And they, in fact, visited Ermelo the next day on March 26th. The cover arrived in Ermelo on the 28th. Now, Ezulwini was so small that they did not have any kind of registration markings, so the postmaster actually drew the registration marking on by hand. This is the only cover I have ever seen of my own that has a hand-drawn registration indicator on it. They visited Johannesburg by car on April 1st and 2nd. This covers postmark Johannesburg. They flew to Petersburg and back on the 3rd, and then spent 3 days in Pretoria while the train traveled ahead to Salisbury, Southern Rhodesia. Now, the Southern Rhodesian stamps. These weren't issued until April 1st and were withdrawn from sale April 30th, so they were only available for a month. They were recess printed by Waterloo and Sons in Great Britain. I think they were withdrawn because Southern Rhodesia issued their delayed World War II victory set in May, which also depicted the royal family. The royals spent 9 days in Southern Rhodesia from the 7th to the 16th. These are examples of Enkeldorn, now Shivu, and Bulawayo postmarked FDCs and their cachets. Again, note the patriotic theme. The royals arrived on the 7th and rejoined the train. They stayed in Salisbury from April 7th to 9th. There were three. While the train was in Southern Rhodesia, the postal duties were taken over by the Southern Rhodesian Post Office. So there are Southern Rhodesia Royal Train postmarks. There are three of these. There are subtle differences between the print of each of the three types. The three accompanying registration hand stamps have more distinct differences, and if covers are registered, the registration hand stamps are the easiest way to tell the differences between the postmarks. However, there are differences in the width of the letter R in Southern and Rhodesia across the bottom of each postmark. Type 1, shown here, is most common. It was used by the post office in Salisbury, now Harare, to service covers submitted by stamp dealers and the public. The postmark is in black ink and the registration hand stamps are in violet ink with a number printed registration number. There's a normal width R. But the key thing about the registration is that you've got a hand stamp that's been used to put the number in here. It's not written in by hand. So every cover with a registration mark like that, or a normal width R down here and here, was handled in Salisbury and never saw the Royal Train. Royal Train True was used in the pilot train post office, and can be found using both blue ink and black ink. The cover I've shown here is all blue ink. It's got blue cancellations, and it's got a blue registration hand stamp. It's dated April 14th. The registration hand stamp has a line of dots where the registration number is handwritten in. And there's I know you can't see it on this particular cover. I'm going to try and get a better example at some point. But the R here and here are very narrow compared to the one that we saw previously for Salisbury. This is the rarest one, which is type 3, and it was used in the white train. The postmark was usually in black ink. The registration hand stamp type is thicker. It has a solid line across the bottom for the registration number. The number is handwritten in, and the cachet for the hand stamp can be black or purple. And it has a wide R across in the bottom, and I don't know if you can see it, but here, the top of the R is much wider here, and that's how you tell that postmark from the other two. After visiting Salisbury, the royal family traveled by train to Victoria Falls via Bulawayo on April 10th, with stops along the way. At Victoria Falls, they had 2 days off, the 11th and 12th. While there, they did make a boat trip up the Zambezi River and landed for a short dockside stop in northern Rhodesia. At Victoria Falls, Princess Elizabeth rehearsed and pre-recorded her 21st birthday speech in case there were technical problems with the planned live broadcast. Here's a cover postmarked April 30th in Victoria Falls, and it is the only cover with an April 47 Victoria Falls cancel that I've been able to find so far. They traveled back to Bulawayo by train on the 13th and spent 3 days in Bulawayo. After the trip to southern Rhodesia, the train left Bulawayo on the morning of the 16th, stopping in Lobatse, Bechuanaland on the 17th for the day. Now, just before we return to Cape Town, I want to show you this cover. This gentleman, and I've got a photo of him here, his name is Frank Gillard, and as you can see, it's got Frank Gillard written on the cover here, and it's addressed to Frank Gillard, BBC. Frank Gillard was the senior BBC correspondent reporting on the trip. Years later, he went on to become the head of radio at the BBC and became a commander of the British Empire. This cover addressed to him, I think, was prepared by him. Now, if you follow the 5 numbers in red, I'll walk you through what happened to this cover. It started off in Swaziland on March 25th, and that's number 1, when the 5 Swaziland stamps were added, and they were tied to the stamps were tied to the cover with a royal visit postmark. 2 is a royal train, a South Africa royal train, type D postmark of March 28th, applied when once back in South Africa. Then 3 is the arrival in southern Rhodesia by train on April 7th with stamps tied to the cover by postmark 2. That's the southern Rhodesian ones on the front. Then we have the Royals left the train on the Royals left southern Rhodesia by train on the 16th, arrived in Lobatse the 17th, which is number 4, and that is the 4 Bechuanaland stamps applied to the reverse of the cover and postmarked with the April 17th postmark. Finally, we have 5, another Royal Train D postmark applied to the South Africa stamps, tying them to the cover when they crossed back into South Africa later on the same day, April 17th, and continued on south on their trip. So I know this is clearly a philatelic cover, but I think it's a lot of fun, and it certainly tells the story of the second half of the trip. They had 3 days going south from Lobatse to Cape Town. The train traveled from Kimberley to Beaufort West on the 19th, passing through DR, which is the top cover here on the 19th, and they had a stop in Beaufort West, which is the bottom cover. The train returned to Cape Town on April 20th. The princess gave her birthday speech on April 21st. And a stamp dealer in Johannesburg prepared a special cachet for the princess's birthday, and I've managed to finally collect all 6 covers with postmarks of her 21st birthday. The Royals left South Africa again on the Vanguard on April 24th from Cape Town. This cover is dated the day of departure. The princess's engagement was announced on July 10th, and the wedding took place on November 20th. There we go. So I'm happy to take any questions and go back through any covers if anybody wants to ask about anything.
That was wonderful, Anne.
Thank you.
What a royal trip in 1947.
Now I have 8 pages of material of this trip as part of the exhibit that's gone. That's 8 double pages that's gone up to that John's bringing up with him to the Royal. So you'll be able to see some of this material if you're going to the Royal. You'll be able to see it in person.
Excellent. Well, it's actually no coincidence that we invited you to do the presentation this week, as it's a precursor for the Royal, with as we're commemorating the 100th anniversary of the birth of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, 1926 to 2026. Your images as well are beautiful. The photos that correspond with your covers.
Well, I'm very fortunate. As secretary of the Malta Study Circle, I have some stamp colleagues who actually live in Cape Town, and I actually got some photographs and some help with rates from 3 different members, 3 different people in Cape Town, which was a tremendous help. One of my colleagues collects postcards of South Africa and older postcards, and he sent some of the photos that I showed here, and he put me onto the railway archives where I was able to get the pictures of the Royal Train and I had done my own research on all the portraits of the stamps. So I'd been writing to the National Portrait Gallery and the Royal Collection Trust. So I'd established a relationship with them and was able to get hold of material I could use for academic or scholarly purposes at no charge.
Fantastic. Um, Tinica says that it's a great presentation. I look forward to seeing your exhibit this weekend.
I wish I was going too, so enjoy.
Yes,
Please enjoy on my behalf.
excellent.
Is anybody, no questions, no comments? If anybody has any information on South African rates, I would welcome anything that anybody's got. The South African rates have been the most challenging. It's interesting, that Frank Gillard cover I showed, I actually bought that from someone here in Nova Scotia, a member of the Nova Scotia Stamp Club. And there's a member of the club who is on the board of the Royal, Gordon Smith. He collects Botswana, and he has all of the journals called the Runner Post issued by the Bechuanalands and Botswana Society, which is now defunct, but he has all their journals archived on his website, and that's where I found all the Bechuanaland postal rates, and it says right in the article about the rates that their rates are tied to South Africa. So I figured that Basutoland and Swaziland must have had the exact same rates because they issued the exact same stamps at the same value tablets. So two Nova Scotians really added to, and Jane, of course, has helped me. In particular, she reviewed the manuscript of the article for me. So a lot of Nova Scotians have contributed to this.
That's terrific. A real team effort, isn't it?
It is. And of course, another member of the Nova Scotia Club is bringing everything up there for me.
Excellent.
No
Well, and
questions?
sorry.
No questions?
I think you were just so thorough that you answered everybody's questions.
Yes. Duncan has indicated that the HMS Vanguard has an interesting story. She was built with spare guns of the reliable Mk-115 used in HMS Hood, the R-class battlecruisers and battleships, and the Queen Elizabeth class. The rest of the ship was essentially a Lion-class battleship, a class that was canceled.
Well, thank you, Duncan. I didn't know anything about the rates, about the ship. That's one thing I haven't researched. I also have just started to acquire some censored covers, and I haven't done any research yet on censor marks, but I plan to down the road once I get rates sorted out. I did have questions when I gave it to North Toronto. I got asked questions about the railway gauge, which I couldn't answer. And I happened to mention that to one of my colleagues via email in Cape Town, and he researched it and wrote back. So I have the information all about the railway gauge in an email tucked away in my research folder.
There's so many different levels, isn't there, in this presentation, and so many different features that you need to include. Well done.
Well, thank you.
And we want to thank you for sharing your research and knowledge for this presentation and our beloved Queen as Princess on the Royal Tour in 1947. And before we close, we would like to acknowledge the lands that we're on. And thank you again to Longley Auctions. Visit longleyauctions.com and maybe you can find some postal history treasures that may reflect the time as our queen as being the princess. So thank you for joining us. And next week, there'll be another stamp talk when Arnie Johnson will present Interrupted Mail. Sounds interesting. We look forward to also seeing you at the RPSC 98th Convention and Exhibition in Waterloo, Ontario June 12th to the 14th. Thank you very much, everyone, and all the best.